Chaos is in a lot of ways the ultimate villain for Warhammer. Perhaps not quite as ultimate as Nagash, but you know, there's nothing wrong with taking second place. They're pure evil, which is a good start in my books. Hard to get yourself a better villain than the forces of hell. They're menacing and frightful, because again, it's hard to look at something like a great unclean one or a keeper of secrets and not be a little bit perturbed. I don't want to fight those things, and if you say you do, you're probably lying. And of course, that's not to mention their two most prominent features in my eyes. They not only feed off the emotions of living things, which means they have a permanent power source even if they aren't explicitly being worshipped, but also whenever you kill a demon, you don't actually kill it. Barring specific circumstances or rituals to permanently deal with one, it just gets sent back to the realm of chaos. So killing a demon doesn't actually reduce the amount of demons you have to ultimately deal with. It really just makes it so you have to deal with the demon again at a later date. Kinda like Alduin getting sent forward in time just so you can have that problem. In a lot of ways, they come across as unbeatable, but I don't think they are. It requires either being incredibly clever, incredibly powerful, or a mixture of both, but I truly believe the forces of chaos aren't invincible. The end times or a potential 40k equivalent aren't inevitable, they're not guaranteed, so today I've got a bit of a list of solutions for how to deal with the chaos threat once and for all. None of the methods are perfect, but they're not supposed to be. As long as they can, in theory, deal with chaos, I consider that a win. But before I talk about getting rid of chaos in Warhammer, did you know Valentine's Day is coming up? You could really use a gift for that special someone. And if you don't have a special someone, which no judgment here, I'm in the same boat, you could use a gift for your special self. And what better to get than the gift of Raycon, the sponsor of this video. In the spirit of Valentine's Day, my favorite thing I love about the Raycon everyday earbuds is just how long they last. They've got 8 hours of playtime and a 32-hour battery life. Not only are you going to be able to listen to your favorite songs, podcasts, or anything else all day, but if you get to charge them one night, then it's no biggie. Which is especially nice for me, because I forget to charge mine quite frequently, and they're still good to go. And of course, with the optimized gel tips, they'll stay in your ears no matter what you're doing. I like to take my dog for a walk and throw on some power metal. I throw on power metal at pretty much any opportunity, and Raycon's everyday earbuds are the perfect way to do it. Athena gets her much needed exercise because she's getting just a little bit too chunky, and I get some much needed music in my life. Been on a Glory Hammer kick lately, and when I'm feeling like a podcast instead, I usually tend to listen to the official podcast to pass the time. Whatever daily task or chore you'll use them for though, Raycon's everyday earbuds won't disappoint. And if you aren't convinced yet to try them out, how about a deal? Click the link in the description box or go to buyraycon.com/PancreasNoWork to get 15% off your Raycon purchase, plus free shipping. Raycon's everyday earbuds are already far more affordable than just about every other product on the market, and now you can get them at a damn good discount. So what are you waiting for? Use my link in the description or pinned comment to get yourself a pair of Raycon everyday earbuds, and get yourself some quality earbuds to make the day go by so much smoother. Now then, let's get problem solving. Going forward, by the way, for what I mean by beat chaos isn't strictly speaking to do something like kill every demon, but render them unable to make massive gains or meaningfully harm a majority of people. So for example, if in a scenario the chaos gods can only ever do something like corrupt one person every 10,000 years who then immediately explodes, that's a win. It'll also naturally focus on the 4 chaos gods the most, since those are the parts of chaos GW cares about, but at least some of these solutions can deal with chaos undivided as a whole. Now to start us off, the simplest way to get rid of at least most of chaos is to just kill everyone in the setting. Take a quick trip to Halo, bring back the rings, and fire them off a couple of times for good measure. And hey, there's some limited precedence in the canon for this. The Cabal wanted Alpharius and Omegon to get the Emperor killed so mankind would be doomed and chaos would go down with them. The Necrons would be fine too, so it's not like everyone would be gone if you eliminated all life with a soul. And over an Age of Sigmar, Nagash and his ilk would be fine. I mean, they're already dead. Chaos in the very best case scenario for itself with this can get some emotions from the Flesh Eater Courts and maybe the Osiarch Bone Reapers, since those lads have an actual personality. Same case for the Tomb Kings from Fantasy, I would imagine. Sure, those 2 AOS factions and individual Tomb Kings would feed the gods a bit, but the few thousand of them or just 2 factions isn't enough to feed the entirety of chaos if everyone else is gone. Of course, this solution comes with the problem of, killing everyone, which for just about everyone involved is what we intelligent people in the academic world like to call the bad ending. And for 2 of those 3 cases, it's not really even a win. The Tomb Kings and Necrons would have almost no chance of being transferred into proper bodies like many of them want, and neither of them would have any more vassals to rule over. Nagash would probably be happy though. I mean, how many of his plans have amounted to trying to kill everyone all at once? I'm pretty sure between Fantasy and AOS he's tried that twice, so in this scenario he'd be having the time of his unlife. But also compounding on this is the possibility that the solution might not even work. Nurgle is the god of entropy and decay, the circle of life, and in many ways death. There's a real possibility that while the other 3 major chaos gods would die out, he'd be just fine to start the cycle anew. Only now with the added bonus that everyone ever born is a follower of Nurgle, which is the opposite of a chaos defeat. So overall, this solution isn't great, both because of the obvious caveats of killing everyone, and because it might not even work. Again though, if you're a fellow Grand Alliance death enjoyer, there are minimal problems with this one. Nagash might just become all-powerful if everyone died, and that's a chaos defeat if I've ever heard one. Fire up the rings, Nagash, you know you want to. On a similar note, another way to do this would be to do something like a setting-wide Necron biotransference, or somehow turning everyone in the fantasy world or mortal realms into vampires. Undeath on the fantasy side of things grants some pretty good resistance to chaos on account of how it works. It violates both the rules of mortal life and whatever passes for rules for chaos, being anathema to each. It's not quite full immunity, and if a vampire chooses to side with chaos like a number of blood dragons did with Khorne in the end times, there's nothing stopping them from doing so. But if every single being in either fantasy setting chose to become an undead, I'm willing to bet it'd be enough. Plus it would supercharge the influence of either Nagash or pre-existing death gods, granting them enough power to hold off the chaos gods or maybe even defeat them outright. So while it might once again just result in an instant Nagash victory, it does fulfill the criteria of beating chaos eventually. Over in 40k meanwhile, Necrons don't have souls, and chaos needs souls to exist. You turn everyone to a Necron, you beat chaos. Even if you don't give other factions Necron tech beyond just biotransference, the actual Necrons could probably use their anti-chaos tech to close warp rifts galaxy-wide while everyone else comes to terms with being a Terminator. Of course, this is not something that would be in any way feasible. It would probably spell the end of chaos, but also in some way ruin pretty much every faction involved, especially the Eldar. Third choice available to you is to simply kill the Chaos Gods. You know, just do that. Walk up to 4 of the most powerful beings to ever exist and give them the old 1-2. Now bringing this up, I'm sure there's a few of you who are going to drop the old Chaos Gods can't be killed because they're crucial parts of reality nugget on me. And to that I say, go to hell. You know how almost everything in Warhammer, especially 40k, is being told by varying degrees of unreliable narration? Well, whose word do we have to take on the Chaos Gods being unkillable, or that their victory is inevitable and they're a crucial part of reality? People depressed that they have to fight demons and the followers of the Chaos Gods? Yeah, those are people I'll take at their word on the matter. Nah, I fully believe the Chaos Gods can be killed. If you disagree, then feel free to skip to the next section, but otherwise, let me explain. For something with perhaps a bit less solid footing, consider the fact that each of the Chaos Gods in 40k came into being at some point or another, with Slaanesh being the last. Well, yes, there's that warp crap of once the gods exist, they have always existed, but I think it entirely stands to reason that if you can create a god, you can kill one. And the universe was clearly fine without them existing at some point or other, so why wouldn't it be if you just got rid of them? For some more solidly lore-backed evidence of being able to kill the gods, we have proof from both 40k and fantasy. From 40k, the Emperor lit Nurgle's entire garden on fire and wounded him. To top it off, him and objects associated with him like his sword can grant a demon true death, erasing it from existence entirely as he did to Horus. If you can do that to a demon, I think it's entirely possible you can do that to the god that spawned the demon. You would need to vastly scale up the power to the point that Big E himself going toe-to-toe with one of the gods is required, but it sounds feasible in theory. Alternatively, Ennead. The idea behind him is that when formed from the death of every Eldar ever, Ennead will use that power to defeat Slaanesh once and for all and free the Eldar's souls from her grasp. While GW continues to pretend that the Ynnari have never existed, Ennead does grant them protection upon death from Slaanesh. Half of what Ennead's prophecy promised is already come true. All he needs is more power from more dead Eldar to be able to take down Slaanesh. Even Kegarek supposedly has one final jest that will free the Eldar from Slaanesh's grip. That's 2 different potential plans the Eldar have to get rid of a Chaos God right there. As for the evidence from fantasy, it's a lot simpler. Cain scarred Slaanesh so badly that Slaanesh retains the scar no matter what form she takes. It's a bit unga-bunga, but if you get a strong enough god, you can probably have them get rid of a Chaos God. If you can scar one, I see no reason you can't kill one. There was also Assyrian's grand plan to defeat Chaos that had a 50-50 shot of either working or getting everyone killed. The end times happened, so clearly it failed, but I don't think that's the kind of failure that means it was never possible. It just means the coin landed on tails and Assyrian lost the bet. Overall, in any setting, it's an incredibly tall order, but not one that's impossible, and that has arguably pretty firm grounding in the lore. Hell, if you got Gork and Mork to cooperate on the task and see it through, they could probably barrel into the realms of any of the gods and put them out for the count. Only eliminating the followers of the Chaos Gods probably wouldn't work, because they get emotions from all living beings, but it'd certainly weaken them. Even if you don't think direct worship has any effect for them and it's just the emotions of living beings, losing all of their minions would probably hurt their plans. That of course has the problem of Chaos followers tending to be quite hard to kill, and of course they oftentimes have a literal hellhole to hide in if it looks like things are going south. Consider this maybe a step 1 of the gods themselves killing the Chaos Gods. Their mortal followers kill the followers of the Chaos Gods and weaken them, then Sigmar or someone comes in with the RKO out of nowhere and finishes them off. Of course, with those methods out of the way, now we have to get a bit creative. And to start, we'll turn to Age of Sigmar, because one of the ways to handle the Chaos Gods, if not Chaos itself, is trapping them. Slaanesh was indeed trapped by Tyrion, Teclis, Malekith, and Morathi. While yes, it was because Slaanesh was glutted on elf souls from the end times and couldn't defend herself properly, it shows it's still entirely possible to do so. And while she is getting closer and closer to breaking out, if it can be done once, it can be done again. Even in their own realms, the Chaos Gods aren't 100% all-powerful, as shown by when the Eldar just waltzed into Nurgle's garden and spent entire days burning his demons to ash. If he was all-powerful, he could have just turned them into ever-suffering trees immediately, and to just assume he didn't choose to do so because he didn't feel like it sounds like an excuse more than anything. The only gods you can get away with saying that kind of thing are Gork and Mork. They do whatever the hell they want. Trapping the gods is the sort of thing that'll require some metaphysical dickery to achieve, such as Slaanesh being trapped between the realms of light and shadow, and it's probably not the sort of thing with a one-size-fits-all solution. Trapping Khorne would probably look a lot different, and of course whatever the specifics may be, it's the sort of thing that'll need constant maintenance and supervision to ensure they don't break out. But unlike all the other options, it has one case of working on an actual Chaos God. Not a demon or champion of chaos, but a full-on Chaos God. Moving on, we have sort of the reverse, cutting chaos off from real space. There's a few ways you can do this, and the most obvious and effective one is in 40k. Just build some more Necron pylons and bam! No more chaos in real space. The biggest hurdle of this one, I imagine, comes from the fact that no one wants to work together to allow the Necrons to go through with this. Everyone is fighting everyone else, and getting along long enough to deal with actual demons from hell is the sort of thing that's beyond 40k for more than a few battles at a time. But they nearly shut down the Eye of Terror with Cadia's pylons, and before the Great Rift, that was the biggest intersection between reality and the warp. Theoretically, it can definitely be done. Obviously, this comes with a whole lot of caveats if it did work. Psykers would still be vulnerable to the predators of the warp travel itself is just asking for demons to show up, but most factions have some measures to deal with these specific instances. For example, Geller Fields, Eldar Ghost Helms preventing perils, and the tried and true method of shooting any at-risk Psykers in the head. Proper mastery of one's psychic power can also prevent demons from invading a Psyker's mind. Not perfectly, none of what I've mentioned so far is, but they can certainly help. And let's not forget about the Tyranids. The shadow over the warp can get so strong it removes warp rifts, especially if the hive mind designs a fleet with that goal in mind. The problem with this solution, at least to me, isn't that the methods are impossible, and more the fact that the effort required to implement them en masse are impossible. Getting the Imperium to train every single Psyker they have on how to master their gifts to the point of being resistant to demons would be almost impossible from a logistical standpoint. There's just too many people. Even if they went out of their way to do so, some would fall through the cracks or awaken their potential after the chance to help comes along. And from a morality standpoint, the Imperium doesn't care about doing this because it doesn't care about their right to live. In the Imperium of Man, your right to live ends the moment you stop being useful, and a Psyker at risk of becoming a portal to the warp is most certainly no longer useful to the Imperium. It would also require a decent amount of cooperation from all factions to some degree, and that once again isn't happening. You'd have to get the entire galaxy to agree on a minimal warp usage treaty, and that includes all those Xenos empires you forget about, like the Coral. Or, of course, allowing the Tyranids to grow strong enough to blot out chaos in its entirety, and that's just trading one villain for another. Plus, they don't like going for chaos, and you're not going to convince them to do it. Technically possible, definitely not going to happen. The second way to do this, and one that is only technically possible in all settings, is to fortify any entryways chaos has into real space so much that they just can't break through. Having one Cadia is no longer enough. Every planet with even the slightest bit higher chance of a chaotic incursion is now a Cadia. There is no longer one Prague in Kislev that is held against dozens of chaos sieges. Every city in Kislev is now Prague. Nordland is going to look like Normandy Beach, and any realm gates are going to be watched by so many Stormcast Eternals you won't be able to rip ass without one of them jumping you for being a possible worshipper of Nurgle. The problems with this one are obvious. Resources. The Imperium does not have the resources necessary to turn every planet into Cadia. The Empire of Kislev do not have the resources to turn every single city into a 20 layers deep castle. None of the gods or their factions do. And even if they did, and who knows, the Imperium may damn well if it could just stop being even a quarter as inefficient as it is, building these fortifications takes time. It requires not only for there to be no problems with constructing and manning the forts, such as traitors or sabotage, but for chaos or other factions not to intervene. The various types of elves would probably let it happen in whatever setting they inhabit. I mean, hell, Teclis would probably help out with making a super fortified realm gate. But even ignoring the fact that chaos isn't just gonna sit there and let you make the biggest fortress possible, plenty of other factions won't either. Every flavor of Orc Warhammer has is gonna beeline it for what is by all means gonna result in one hell of a fight. The Tyranids are gonna see all this construction going on, realize it means a lot of construction workers, and start invading for all that sweet biomass. And if you think Nagash would just let Sigmar or the Forces of Order build a super fortress without intervening, you're out of your goddamned mind. Out of every single possible solution, this is one of the most unlikely. Not only does it require intense amounts of resources and some small amount of cooperation between factions who hate each other, those fortifications also need to hold out against an endless tide of demons. But as with pretty much every solution so far, it can theoretically work. While in the long term it doesn't get rid of them, when it comes to individual battles, banishing a demon and killing it are the same thing. The one you shot isn't going to be making a reappearance in the same fight. And hey, part of why Sigmar was trapped in the Elven Vortex by Tzeentch was because the Chaos Gods feared he'd unite Order against them and ensure their plans always failed. If they're afraid of that, then surely a super fortress that can hold the line forever could work. So all you need to do is make sure these fortresses never fall, they all have constant maintenance, and that you have the economy to forever supply these country-sized fortresses. Easy. Actually, you know, now that I'm thinking about it, Balthasar Gelt and some priests and wizards walled off the entire Empire of Man. Yeah, it got some cracks in it eventually, but it breached the clouds it was so tall, and God only knows how thick it was. Before it fell because the priests supporting it withdrew their support, I'm pretty sure the only things that got past it were the Changeling and a breach led by Acold Hellbrass, which failed. Why the hell didn't anyone just do that again? Fuck, Sigmar did it for an entire realm of reality. This is actually a lot more feasible than you'd think. Now this next one is perhaps even less likely to work, because it requires everyone in the settings collectively named Warhammer to get along. But since the Chaos Gods feed on emotions, negative ones of course being the most prevalent, it should theoretically be possible to change them fundamentally by worshipping them in different forms. Maybe give Khorne blood in the form of donations, that sort of thing. Going forward on the assumption that both Chaos itself and the Big Four are shaped by the beliefs of mortal races, worshipping them in different ways should theoretically make the Chaos Gods not evil. Getting everyone to just generally chill the hell out might have a similar effect. And I'd count that as defeating them, since Chaos, while still being around, wouldn't be nearly as antagonistic anymore. And there's some small amount of evidence in 40k to support this, since it was the war in heaven that caused the foundations of Chaos to form. It was such a shit show that the warp itself became as turbulent as it would eventually become. I think you could reverse that and make it calm once again. Of course, the issue with this one is that the settings of Warhammer are so god-awful that it would require fundamentally changing them on a level that's more or less impossible. You wouldn't have to just get the followers of Chaos to sit down and play nice, you'd have to do it between every faction in the setting. Get the Orcs to chill out with the war, get the Imperium to stop being so xenophobic. Things that just generally are not going to happen. People are always going to want a war god here, and Khorne's a pretty damn good one, much as it pains me to admit it. Trying to get the followers of Khorne to either worship indifferently or just calm down in general is the sort of thing that'll just get you added to the Skull Throne. Really, I've just mentioned this possibility for the sake of the theoretical. Gilliman would be proud of me, I'm sure. On a related note, trying to form other gods of chaos based on kinder emotions would likely see a similar failed outcome. Perhaps it'd work a bit better, but the odds are decent that the Chaos Gods might just strangle this nascent kind god of chaos in its infancy. Still, it would be cool to see nicer Chaos Gods in the wild, an actually honorable warrior god, a life god who doesn't fill you with cancer. It'd be cool in theory. Shame that if they existed, they'd probably get scar-branded before they could do anything. Plus, in all honesty, it'd probably be more worthwhile to just pour your hopes into an existing god. Sigmar, Teclis, Kegarak, a lot of better options than maybe getting some minor godling that won't do much in the end. Narratively, it would at least give Chaos some more depth, but functionally, it's not going anywhere. Although that being said, an existing god could come along and usurp Chaos from under the Big Four's feet. Now, this working is something that's phenomenally unlikely, but it has major precedence from the end times of all places. Nagash planned on ascending to godhood and basically becoming Chaos, ensuring his ultimate victory as he not only had complete control over death, but also chaos. It should come as no surprise that it failed, but if you look at Nagash's list of failures, there's something very noteworthy about them. Aside from the Skaven being involved in pretty much all of them, Nagash's plans fail because he's stopped, not because they have no chance of working. I mean, the Chaos Gods started throwing everything they could at him during the end times when he returned out of fear that he'd succeed, so on some level it is feasible. The last potentially feasible method that comes to my mind is a sort of mass sacrifice method, where the souls of all the followers of the gods sacrifice themselves and give their spirit to their patron deity. Every Imperial jumps into an Emperor-shaped black hole to fuel them, the Eldar finally all just give in and end it to empower Ennead, and over in fantasy, everyone either ends up empowering gods like Sigmar, Asurian, or Cain. And there's once again solid evidence to at least partially support this, since the thing with Ennead was the original plan to bring him into being. All the Eldar die, Ennead is born, / gets obliterated. Who's to say this couldn't work with other gods? Of course, even with the mostly solidly confirmed case of Ennead, this might not have been enough. Many Eldar consider the Ynnari to be Eldar heresy, so quite frankly, it might have ultimately failed and immediately damned all of them if they took the plunge. And consider that the Eldars are masters of their psychic powers and probably able to direct where their souls go to some limited degree with something like Spirit Stones. Other factions going a similar route might just end up automatically losing because they lost all their manpower at best, and at worst, instantly give all those souls to Chaos instead of the Emperor. Over in Fantasyland, the issues are much the same, only with the added benefit of it almost certainly just going to empower Nagash against the other gods if you do it in Age of Sigmar. He controls all the afterlives after all, everything that dies ends up in his bony claws sooner or later. It would technically work, it's just going to result in something that's just as bad as Chaos winning. To repeat myself though, Grand Alliance death is where the true enlightened thinkers of AOS go. Those realms are rightfully his, so this is only a win as far as I care. The biggest hurdle of course here is in convincing every single one of your followers to not only end their lives for you, but entrust their immortal souls with you directly. And not with an afterlife like the Emperor might be building, but directly giving it to the god they follow. For some of them, it probably wouldn't be too hard. Alarielle could probably convince a good portion of the tree spirits of the Sylvaneth to do it, such as their devotion to her. And if you could convince the Fire Slayers it would result in Grimnir coming back, they'd probably take their lives on the spot. But others would naturally be much more hesitant. Plenty of 40k books show that Emperor worship isn't always on the fanatical level of everyone being willing to swallow a live grenade because a priest asked them to. Plenty of people would refuse, and I doubt every citizen of the Empire of Man or the cities of Sigmar would do the same either. I'd also like to briefly mention that from a moral standpoint this is beyond horrific, but this is Warhammer. Atrocities are both a given and regularly performed. No sense taking a perfectly good option to deal with chaos once and for all off the table just because it's a little bit monstrous. Besides, things like servitors exist. You're telling me you'd rather get turned into one of those than potentially become one with Sigmar? Any further methods I came up with are a bit goofy, so really not something too worth considering. That being said, I am a big fan of the method of getting everyone everywhere constantly blackout drunk to cause chaos to lose all its power. Imagine it. Yes, some people would get into a drunken brawl, but most people would be too busy partying to pay Khorne's constant demand for bloodshed any mind. They'd be too out of their mind to have half the brain power needed for a Tzeentch scheme. And of course, alcohol is a disinfectant. That'll make sure Nurgle can't get his dirty hands on your soul either. Now, perhaps this might empower Slaanesh, but if everyone's having a reality-wide party, that means the emotions are going to be largely positive. And either way, I don't think a nice buzz is enough to provide Slaanesh with the excess she needs. Just make sure no one breaks out the cocaine. As for the feasibility of this one, you just have to convince everyone everywhere to lay down their arms and have a drink instead. For some factions like the Undead, basically impossible. For others like the Ogres or Dwarfs, they might damn well be doing that before you ask them to. And that's about all the methods I've found or come up with. Obviously, all of these are easier said than done, I just thought it'd be a fun video on the hypothetical level. Chaos being portrayed as unbeatable isn't that fun. It just makes you think what's the point of trying to stop them, might as well get it over with and give in. And again, beating them doesn't mean getting rid of the Chaos Gods. They aren't all powerful, and even if you believe they can't be killed, they absolutely can be beaten. And since I'm worried people might think otherwise, no, I don't want any of these scenarios to actually happen. Warhammer would be a lot less fun if you just got rid of chaos. Let me know of any ways you might have to beat chaos. And as always, thank you to my wonderful channel members. You are the chaos to my chaos follower, the thing that keeps me going in the name of making things worse. If you'd like to support the channel, feel free to subscribe or become a member. Either way, thank you for watching and take care out there. Of course, there are plenty of out-of-40k canon ways to do it, but pulling other franchises in to fix the problems just feels like cheating, you know? That being said, at least 2 ways to guaranteed fix chaos exist. One is to just throw Doomguy at chaos and watch as it shrivels and dies. No more chaos within a year, done. He's Doomguy. He killed God. Creator of all reality God. The Chaos Gods can't compare to that. But my personal favorite is to take the Chaos Gods and have them fight against COD zombies that are at round 50 or higher. Shoot them with a las cannon and it's like, oh cool, you emptied 3 entire pack-a-punch LMG magazines into me? Congrats, you killed 2 zombies and made a crawler. Throw an entire Black Crusade at a single crawler and they'd take it down after thousands of casualties and half their ammunition supply wasted. Or just melt their godly minds by implanting knowledge of the entire COD zombie storyline directly into their brains. Fucking Tzeentch couldn't handle that crap. Remember it was just Group 935 messing with stuff they probably shouldn't? I miss those days.